I recently posted a video asking collectors to consider their responsibility in the high prices of retro video games and collectibles, and the video got a lot of attention. To date, it has over 1,500 comments, many of which are mine responding to your comments, but still, that's the most I've ever had on a video for anything I've ever made. A whole lot of passionate feedback later, it got me wondering, why does the subject resonate so deeply with people? I mean, people care so much about the high prices of their childhood video games, and it made me realize, though, something quite powerful. But before I can get any further into this, I gotta give you this disclaimer. First, I wanted to make sure I was communicating what I thought I was. So I took the transcript of the last video, ran it through ChatGPT, and asked it to summarize it in 1 to 2 sentences, and this is what ChatGPT said. The video reflects on why retro video game prices have skyrocketed, pointing not just to supply and demand, resellers or YouTubers, but to collectors themselves, driven by nostalgia, FOMO, and impulsive buying. Ultimately, the creator urges viewers to examine their own habits and emotional motivations behind collecting, suggesting that change begins with self-awareness rather than blame. That's pretty much what I was going for. I was trying to make the argument that the buyer sets the price no matter what seller's listed as. Take eBay comps, for example. A lot of people will sometimes pull up eBay and look at the listed examples as what the price is, but that means nothing. You could have a bunch of people grab, say, 1943 complete in box on the NES and put it up for $500, but that doesn't mean that it's worth $500. It's only worth $500 if people start buying it for $500. No matter how influential anyone is, the buyer ultimately decides what it's worth to them. But some of the comments held on tight to blaming resellers and YouTubers, not just by pointing out that these are the people who caused this issue, but there was a lot of emotion and passion in those comments. And whenever I see that kind of response to something, it gets me curious and wondering, where is all of that coming from? And then it dawned on me that there might be a source for this that we can all relate to. So in order to get there, we need to go back to our respective childhoods and talk about the word play. Before we continue, make sure to leave a comment and subscribe. So what is play? I asked Google to define it for me, and they said, play in the context of playing with friends refers to recreational activities enjoyed with others for fun and entertainment, often without a specific goal or reward outside of the activity itself. Every culture from the beginning of time has had some version of play. There's different activities from birth to the last stages of life that all of us enjoy that are some sort of recreation or fun thing to do. That could be in sports and competition. It could be with our creativity and imagination by using action figures. It could also be in playing pretend. It also might be in video games. But playing is more than trivial fun. It not only activates our imagination and our creativity, it influences our relationships far more than you may actually realize. But even more than any of that, it affects the literal way our brain develops. For children, play is a language. Take, for example, this Link figure. This is just a piece of plastic, and though it comes from the video game series The Legend of Zelda, and there might be some things about Link that you might be playing, you're not recreating everything that you do in the game necessarily. This plastic figure that doesn't talk or doesn't have any interaction with the person that's playing with it has a full storyline. It has things that it does. It has things that it accomplishes in the play, good guys versus bad guys, etc. Where is all that coming from? Well, it's coming from the imagination and inner world of the child who's playing with the toy. The child's playing is directly influenced by what the child is experiencing in their life. Play is a language. Think about when you were a kid and how you played. What did you like to play the most? And how much of that involved video games? I'm not aware of any specific data on video games and play that I can reference here, and maybe it's out there and I'm just not seeing it. So treat what I'm saying very much as a theory, not as a diagnosis or anything like that, or medical advice. If there's anything that's touched on this video that seems to be speaking to you directly that may or may not be true, I encourage you to talk to a medical professional such as a therapist to explore these subjects a little bit deeper. Let's continue with the video. All that being said, the power of play has been well documented in the scientific literature over and over again, and I can't help but think that playing video games as a part of play in general. Let's start by talking about single-player games. Single-player games may be about immersing yourself in a big open world like The Witcher 3 or Skyrim. It could also be a tightly crafted thrill ride like Uncharted or the Resident Evil franchises, saving the world with a party of unlikely heroes in an RPG like Final Fantasy VII, or managing a season of your favorite team such as an MLB The Show. And in and of themselves, single-player games can be a wonderful way to relax and pass the time as a means of recreation and play. But I also have this theory that maybe sometimes playing video games, especially if we play too many hours of video games, could be a way of trying to deal with other things in our life through video games. Let me explain. I can't help but wonder if sometimes when we play video games, especially many hours of video games, it's a way of trying to have mastery in a digital world, whereas in the real world, we're struggling to keep up. Are you struggling to fit in? Well, what's it like to lead a party of people where you're the leader, or everyone in the town or wherever it is that you're doing reveres you? Do you feel powerless? Well, what's it like to be in a digital world where you feel totally powerful? What if video games are the antidote to some of those things that you might be struggling with? Or maybe you grew up in a chaotic environment with inconsistent rules and structure. Gaming could be a structured environment that felt good. It could have been relaxing or a distraction or some other means as an antidote to all of that instability. Play and playing games can make us feel safe. But there's still another category of gameplay that we need to talk about in this conversation, and that's multiplayer gaming, playing together. From the earliest days of gamings with Pong machines, games were designed with a multiplayer component in mind. The NES had the 2 controller ports, and you could also buy the adapter and play with 4 players in certain games. The N64 natively had 4 players, as well as the Dreamcast. And online today, you can play with hundreds, if not thousands of people in various capacities. People want to play together. However, most of today's adults, such as those of us in our 40s, we didn't play video games in our childhood with an internet connection. We usually relied on the console right there, sitting on a couch next to each other, shouting at the TV when someone was beating us or we were beating them at Smash Brothers or some other awesome epic multiplayer game. Late night sleepovers with pizza and playing your favorite video games with your friends. All of this stuff was playing together in the same room on a couch in front of the TV, and those memories are priceless. But what happens when we play together? When you played Mario Kart with your dad or battled Pokemon with your friends, your brain was soaking in oxytocin, the same hormone that bonds babies to their parents. Oxytocin, or the bonding hormone, creates a sense of trust, safety, and connection. The laughter, the victories, the frustration, it wasn't just having fun playing video games, it was wiring our brains, anchoring those moments deep into our memory. It's not a stretch to say that play is a relational adhesive. And that's not just something that affected your childhood, it affects your adult life and adult relationships as well. Attachment theory and attachment therapy helps people understand how early relationships, especially with parents or caregivers, shape the way we connect, trust, and relate to others later in life. It's like rewiring your emotional GPS based on how you learn to feel safe or not safe as a kid. Studies in developmental neuroscience show that play, especially with caregivers and close peers, not only activates oxytocin, but it strengthens the prefrontal cortex, which is the brain's center for emotion, memory, and decision making. So when children play video games with their parents or their friends, it's not just trivial fun, it's formative. Those shared experiences become emotionally encoded, creating deep neural associations with safety, bonding, and joy. If we have these explicit and implicit experiences, you can see how years later, when encountering those same games at a thrift store or a retro game shop, or watching people talk about them on YouTube, can trigger dopaminergic and oxytocin-linked memories, explaining the emotional pull behind nostalgic purchases. In short, what felt like just play was neurobiological storytelling in action, and we're still following that script today as adults. So to summarize so far, number 1, play is more than just inconsequential fun. Number 2, playing affects our brain's wiring and development. Number 3, playing with someone bonds us to them relationally. And number 4, encountering something that you played in childhood today as an adult accesses something deep in your emotional memory that you may or may not realize is pretty important. So what does all this have to do with the high prices of retro video games? Let's talk about the Nintendo GameCube for a moment.
How fun would it be to go back and attempt to achieve my childhood dreams of owning a collection of GameCube games today as a 26, almost 27-year-old man?
Perhaps most infamously, Phoenix Resale, arguably the most visible reseller in the video game space and most controversial, might have unintentionally stepped on not just one, but 2 landmines with his GameCube Gambit series.
Over the course of what I hope will be multiple episodes, we're going to see just how big of a GameCube collection I can build.
And who among us couldn't relate to this idea? It's so cool to think of as kids having an unending supply of video games. And when so many of us maybe loved the GameCube growing up, we were excited to see him discover those games along the way as well.
Let's head into our first stop, half-price books. This is the GameCube Gambit.
When you consider the power that play and video games can have on our childhood experiences and growing up and what that means to us, he may have unintentionally been tapping into something emotionally that so many of us have been feeling, which made it more interesting and more invested when it came to watching the series unfold. Given how much power video games and play has on our collective experiences growing up from childhood, he may not have realized just how much he was tapping into that with his audience.
Do you guys have any favorite GameCube games?
Resident Evil 4 was always mine.
And therefore, once the series got rolling along, we were that much more excited to see him get a game that reminded us of a game that we played, or seeing him track down a hard-to-find game, or learning about some of those games ourselves, and it was all very exciting.
Feels really good to be making progress already.
But landmine number 2 might have been when he got to the end of the series, and he decided to sell off most of the games in the GameCube Gambit video series.
I firmly believe that as a collector, as a gamer, whatever, you should keep what you want, you should give away what you want, you should sell what you want.
To many gamers, when he decided to sell a lot of the games from that collection, it didn't feel like someone's personal business decision, it felt like a betrayal. But I think that that moment pinpoints exactly the crux of where this emotion comes from. It's when you take those emotionally meaningful childhood experiences, especially those connected to video games, and you make them a business. It's one thing when you're doing a business in the modern era that maybe sells cool things to younger audiences to help make their childhoods great. It's a totally different thing when you resell things that are from adults' childhoods of the past. It got me thinking. I bet this is why resellers of video games get so much more scrutiny than resellers of other categories of items. Because resellers of video games, especially retro video games, aren't just selling games, they're selling memories and feelings, and those have a lot more power than just playing games that you discovered as an adult. To some people, maybe it comes across as we're exploiting one another's childhoods when we resell old video games, especially at prices higher than the market rate that they initially went for. Perhaps what may be happening is that when you see other gamers representing online platforms to sell on, or to go from loving talking about games to loving talking about running a business, it may feel wrong. Almost like that individual is messing with something that's supposed to be sacred. But why would it be sacred? Well, maybe that's because of the power of play. If play has so many different developmental, biological, or relational implications that we may or may not be aware of, it may feel a bit more personal when someone is going out and making a business off of those things that we grew up enjoying. That's because today, years later, when we see that old game box or hear that console startup sound, something stirs. And I would argue that it's not just nostalgia. It might be the emotional imprint of feeling loved, seen, and safe. That's why we chase it, why we collect, and why we spend. Because what might have merely looked like playing around was actually something much more powerful. Today there are many ways to play and enjoy your favorite games you grew up playing without having to go buy a CRT television, an original console, and a game from decades past. Nintendo Switch Online has some of the very best and even priciest games today in physical form on their Nintendo Switch Online service that you can enjoy at the press of a button. Sega has released tons of compilation discs of a bunch of their best games that you can buy really cheap. There's also lots of other ways to get into games without having to go buy the physical copies of all of them and enjoy them plentifully right now and get to those game experiences that you remember playing from way back when. But even if you did all of that, many people would say there's still nothing like putting the NES cartridge into the Nintendo, turning the power on, and hearing that sound from the TV and not from a nice sound system, and just enjoying it as it once was. But why? It's because when you first enjoyed that stuff, it connects to something deep inside of you that you were experiencing at that time. The power of play and the power of playing together is a huge factor that may be influencing all of that. And all of that influence may be motivating you to buy into the demand and to spend more money when it comes to buying and reliving some of those incredible childhood experiences. So if any of this theory is true, I feel some empathy for people who are priced out and can't buy in and play those old games and relive those old experiences. It makes me appreciate when people are angry and upset where that anger and frustration is coming from and where that passion is coming from, because I think it's maybe connected to something deeper. I also have to say this, I don't think that everyone who is upset about the high prices of retro games is giving a tell that there's something in their childhood or something that they're connected to in their past that goes that deep for everyone. I don't think that's really fair. I think for everyone it's a different story. But I am saying that for some of us, I think that might be why this particular topic, retro video games and high prices, has so much power, and it's worth exploring that a little bit, especially depending on how much it may be upsetting you when it comes to enjoying this hobby. After all, there are a lot of systems, games, and consoles right now that are still very affordable. In fact, you can go to JRPG Life's channel and look at their Nintendo Quest series, where they've gone through a bunch of different Nintendo consoles and only bought games under $20. It's really easy to highlight games like Earthbound or Kuon or some of the heavy hitter games on every console platform and assume that that's how all of the games are, when really that's not the case. There's still lots of really good $5, $10, and $20 game experiences out there that are wonderful to get and add to anyone's collection today. And still, with all that being said, I do think that the power of play, understanding that it's not just a trivial way to pass one's time or just to engage in some recreation, is a really important part in understanding and appreciating the discussion around not only retro video games, but really a lot of things from our childhoods. In my experience, gaming enthusiasts don't just want to have a collection, they want to share it with everyone. They want to do room tours. They want to talk about their favorite games in their collection or their early childhood memories of when they first discovered a certain game and how that totally blew their mind and was one of their favorite parts of their childhood growing up. And I think that's one of the best things about this hobby, is that it's not something that I think is really meant to be done in isolation, but it's something that can foster community. Talking about these games, going to events, going to conventions, leaving comments in the videos, doing all of that stuff is something that's really exciting that I think bonds us all together, and I don't want to get away from the power that can be in that even in our adult years. Play always has been and always should be about something that bonds people together. Make sure to leave a comment below and let me know what you think about all of this. I love reading your comments and engaging in the discussion. And to those who have left comments, I so appreciate that even when you disagree with me or with other people, we tend to do it agreeably. In other words, when people talk about the ideas and don't resort to name calling or attacking people's character, I think there's something really productive about that that's really good. So thank you to everyone who continues to engage thusly. I just said thusly. Thank you to everyone who engages in that manner. That's what I'm trying to say.